The Sermon on the Mount, or The Key to Christianity. An interpretation by Pekka Ervast. 17. The Straight Way. Matt. 7:13. Enter ye in by the narrow gate. For wide is the gate, and broad is the way, that leadeth to death, and many be they that enter in thereby. 14. But narrow is the gate, and straitened the way, that leadeth unto life, and few be they that find it. 21. Not every one that saith unto me, Master, Master, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. 22. Many will say to me in that day, Master, Master, did we not prophesy by thy name, and by thy name cast out devils, and by thy name do many mighty works? 23. And then I will confess unto them, I never knew you, depart from me, ye that did not follow my law. 24. Every one therefore which heareth these words of mine, and doeth them, shall be likened unto a wise man, which built his house upon the rock. 25. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat upon that house, but it fell not, for it was founded upon the rock. 26. And every one that heareth these words of mine, and doeth them not, shall be likened unto a foolish man, which built his house upon the sand. 27. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and smote upon that house, and it fell, and great was the fall thereof. Now you have again been pleased to transpose some verses from one place to another. Do not speak thus, it is no whim of mine. Do you not see the logic of it? At the end of his Sermon on the Mount, Jesus wishes to impress upon his followers the right understanding of the kingdom of heaven in its relation to the visible world. Although the kingdom of heaven is not separated from the world of mammon, whether locally or temporally, for, according to the words of Jesus, it lies within ourselves as human beings, nevertheless, entering the kingdom of heaven is not as easy as stepping through the door from one room into another in this kingdom of the world. Notwithstanding its nearness, the kingdom of heaven is, by its own essential qualifications, so far above our everyday consciousness that it is like treading a long way before it is possible to reach the gate of the kingdom. This way is called by Jesus the straight road, Tethliman H. Hodos, in Latin Arta Via. And by what is the straight way distinguished? That is clearly set forth in verses 21 to 27. The straight road is the way of living works, not of any faith. They that content themselves by calling Jesus their Master, Lord, do not walk upon the narrow path. The straight road is not the way of public worship, saintly performances, holy prayers, and sacraments. Only he does walk on the straight way who fulfills the will of the Father, that is, lives in strict observance of the commandments of Jesus. Depart from me, ye that did not follow my law. Here you once more use a translation of your own, ye that did not follow my law. The old translation reads, ye that work iniquity. The original text runs, hoi ergat somenoi tien anomian, in Latin qui opera mini iniquitatem. Rendered literally into English, that is, as the old translation has it, ye that work iniquity or lawlessness. Now, who work iniquity, who are lawless, but they that do not follow the law? And of which law is here the question? Evidently not of the law of Moses, which had passed its day and grown old, but of the law of life proclaimed by Jesus and revealed by him in his 5 commandments. The commandments of Jesus were now the highest expression of the law, hence disobeying them was breaking the law of life. What do the words in that day mean in the verse, "Many will say to me," etc.? Does Jesus speak of the hour of death? You will observe that I have put those words in parentheses. They are evidently a later interpolation. Some copyists at his convent desk thought of the kingdom of heaven as an after-death state and added the words with good intent. In the parallel verses of the Gospel of Luke no such matter is mentioned, Luke 6:43-49. The words in that day confound the meaning of the sentence entirely, if we remember what Jesus meant by the kingdom of heaven. In this verse Jesus expressly warns his followers against using their so-called psychic powers. Do not perform mighty works by the aid of occult forces thinking that thereby your spiritual growth will be furthered. The occult powers have their own realm in the world of the soul, but they do not rise into the kingdom of the spirit. Jesus does not speak of the after death, but of the eternal, spiritual life of the kingdom of heaven or God, and therefore the words in that day are entirely without foundation. They are few indeed who walk upon the straight way. Most people will have to content themselves with the broad way that leadeth to destruction, but now I find that you translate to death. Why such a translation, please? For the sake of the logical train of reasoning, death is the opposite of life. The words eistn apolleon of the Greek text and ad perditionem of the Latin version certainly mean to destruction, but as this word reminds one of the theological perdition, I have changed it to death. Still, if you wish to retain the word destruction, you should at least clearly understand what is meant by destruction or perdition. And you cannot do so without taking into account the possibility of reincarnation of which we spoke some time ago. Eternal life is with the spirit, but before the psychic, personal ego of man in self-forgetfulness unites with the spirit, it is absolutely necessary for the human spirit to be born over and over again into the psychic and corporeal world, until at last in some future incarnation the personal ego brought forth by the spirit will become so spiritually minded that he shall step on the straight way, overcome by an inextinguishable longing for the home of his Father. The straight and narrow road alone leads to eternal life. Walking on the broad way leads to personal death and rebirth. Thus, all men walk on the broad way, except those few who step on the straight path. No, not all, but as Jesus said, many, polloi, multi. How is that? What path, then, are the great masses treading? No path at all, but of course the number of those that step on the broad way is daily increasing. Now I fail to understand. This is something quite new. Do we not usually think with pity, perhaps even with scorn, of those who walk on the broad way to eternal perdition? We have been taught to think a great many foolish thoughts, but that does not change the facts of life nor the teachings of Jesus, does it? What is the teaching of Jesus on this point? I am not yet perfectly aware of it. All men that, swamped by the hustle and bustle of this world, lead a butterfly existence without thought of anything but everyday joys and sorrows, live their life without entering any way. They are not yet awake enough to become seekers. Only those who begin to seek and knock are treading the way. But as long as their seeking tends to remain within the folds of their intelligence or their psychic ego, as long as they, in other words, are occupied with speculating and philosophizing, studying and selecting, or as long as they believe in dogmatic theology, identify themselves with some church or sect and worship God by chanting and preaching, so long do they still walk on the broad way, leading to death and rebirth. Only when their seeking begins to gravitate towards the spiritual life and its ideal ethical values, only then will they turn off from the broad way and enter upon the narrow path, following fixedly and concentratedly in the footsteps of their master. Men are thus divided into three classes. Yes. Using the terms of Jesus, they are called, first, ethnikoi, everyday people, pagans, second, polloi, many, and third, oligoi, few. Many are called, but few are chosen. As you will remember, Paul, for instance, 1 Thess. 5:23, divides man into three principal parts: body, to soma, soul, the psyche, and spirit, to pneuma. Now ethnikoi, the pagans or everyday people, are those whose consciousness centers in their body. They are corporeal men. Smatikoi, the walkers on the broad way, are the many. Hoi polloi, whose consciousness centers in the life of their personal soul. They are psychic men. Psychikoi, again, the walkers on the straight way, are those few. Hoi oligoi, whose consciousness feels at home with the spirit. They are spiritual men. Pneumatikoi.